Now, these tomatoes are already in trellises. I'm just gonna go through and prune off a little bit because they're going kind of wild, and the trellises that they're in are called the Titan tomato cages from Gardener Supply Company. I didn't buy these myself. They sent them out to me, I think it was last year, so that I could try them out. And I haven't done a full review on them yet because I tried them out in containers first and they worked really good. I had them in big 25-gallon containers, but the only thing that I didn't like about them in that area wasn't necessarily that the trellises were bad. It's just that they were up against the wall, so it was hard for me to get around them. So this time around, I decided to try them out in the garden beds, and I love them. I love them. As you can see, they are covered in vines and they're not going anywhere. They are staying nice and sturdy, and I personally love the way they look. I love how easy they are to use. And now, instead of having to tie anything up, I just have to go through and prune things. Like, there's a few blooms on there, but no flowers yet. So I'm just trying to just prune a couple of these branches to get them a little more under control. And I also just want to open up some airflow, because you know how tomatoes are. So one of the main areas that I try to focus on is the bottoms down here. I want to make sure that there's no leaves touching the ground, and if there is any, I try and prune them off, or if there's any dead or dry leaves, I try and get rid of them. That way, whenever I water the plants, there's no water splashing back on them, and I can have a healthier plant this way. Before spring, because spring I plan to, this month I plan to start, well, I think it's either this month and next month, I'm gonna focus on starting some more tomatoes and peppers from seed. And before I plant them out, I'm gonna place another order of these tomato tank. Ooh, hold on, this one needs to snap on there. And before I plant them out, I'm gonna place another order of these tomato cages so that I can spread them out throughout the garden, because I really like the way they work. This, I think, is probably one of the only ways that I like growing indeterminates, because it's stable enough, it's a little bit less work for me to maintain, and they just work really good. Let me get my other little pruners. Okay. Any leaves that don't look the greatest, I come through and I just prune them off. The first trellis is looking so much better. It takes me a while because I like to work kind of slow. I like to look at everything, but it's honestly so much fun. And kind of like therapeutic just being here, trimming my tomato plants. I also want to make sure that I'm opening up and allowing a little bit more airflow, because over the next few months, we're going to start to get, hopefully, a lot more rain than we have earlier in the year. So I want to make sure that my tomatoes don't start to get any disease with all the rain that we're going to have coming our way soon, hopefully. Fingers crossed. There you go. That is looking so much better. You see, you can actually start to see the vines now. And the vines are just gonna keep growing up until it gets too cold for them, but I don't think it's gonna get too cold for them because we don't get that cold here in the low desert. And I'll just keep going through and pruning them as they keep growing. This side of the trellises is way crazier and way more out of control. So I'm gonna go through and prune these as well, but I'm gonna try and leave some on because there's just so many blooms on here that I would like to keep. So maybe I could just, you know what? Okay, let's do this. Let me see, do you have flowers? I'm trying to keep as many flowers as possible because I want that fruit to start setting. Especially because once it gets cold, it takes way longer for the fruit to ripen. Any parts that don't have fruit, I'm just gonna prune them off. Just to try and keep it a little bit less crazy and wild. Let me show you. So you see all of these clusters starting to form is exactly why I'm being extra careful to only prune off non-fruiting branches, but also to avoid getting rid of any of that beautiful fruit. So you see, out of all these, I'm going to clean up some of these leaves. So that's why I like using little snips like this to clean up tomato plants in this way because I can be a lot more precise. And they're really sharp too, which makes the whole process easier. Okay, but you can start to see all these vines making their way up. And I want to make sure I get all of the tomato plants, all of the tomato trimmings out of the garden bed because I don't know where these tomatoes have been. I don't know what they're carrying with them. Okay, see, that's starting to look way cleaner, but we still have a ways to go. Okay, doesn't that look way better? I mean, you can see how huge the vines are, but I like letting them go in between the trellises because I want it to be more of a wall of tomatoes rather than an individual tomato trellis per tomato plant. And in some of these, I have even up to like 2 tomato plants per trellis, and they're still holding them up pretty great. This is one of the last tomato plants, and I think this is probably also the craziest one. But just give me a moment and I'll have it looking brand spanking new. Let me do a time lapse for this one because this is going to take a while. Pruning the tomatoes took way longer than I expected, but at the same time, I hadn't pruned them in months, so it was a well-needed prune, and there's still quite a bit on top that I'm gonna leave a bit more full just because there's a lot of fruit setting, and I want to make sure that I get as much fruit before it gets really cold here in the low desert. But this is what they look like now. Kind of bald, kind of bare, but they'll fill out in no time. You can start to see all the vines and how they're sort of intertwining throughout the trellises. And I'm okay with that because whenever I've tried to just get them to stay within one trellis, it's just, they grow so fast that it's kind of impossible. And this way, even if there's a strong gust of wind, it's almost acting, they're almost holding on to each other. But look at some of these clusters. There's several up there. Let me see. Let me go around to the other side. Look at those big ones right there. Oh my gosh. And then there's several around here. So I'm happy with the way that looks. Now I'm gonna walk around the garden to see if there's anything else that I really need to trellis, because otherwise I'm gonna get to work on a different task. I want to stay more towards the shaded section only because the sun is starting to get a little bit more intense on the sides of the garden where we have a lot more direct sunlight. Let me see. I did those this morning, looking really ugly, but they're standing upright. This roselle might be my next one. I want to, but see, the thing with this one is I don't even think it needs to be trellised. I think it needs to come out soon. It's still producing calyxes, as you can see right there, but they just haven't plumped up yet. What else? I think everything else for the most part is looking pretty tidy. I also wanted to show you this tomato plant because this is one that survived the summer. This was supposed to be some sort of like dwarf tomato plant, and it's honestly grown a lot bigger than I think it should have gotten. But it's also loaded with fruit everywhere. So this plant is a lot older, and I didn't even know that it was still alive. Let me see if I can find the stem. Look, you could just tell how old this stem is. Very, very gnarly looking. It made it through the summer. I got a little bit of sun scald right there, but it stayed alive. So I just pruned it back and hoped that it would start leafing out again. And it did, and now it's starting to fill up with fruit. Delicious fruit. That makes me feel so happy. Oh, I love seeing plants thrive, and I love seeing plants that probably wouldn't survive surviving. Okay, so I think trellis-wise, everything's looking pretty good. Pretty good. So I think I'm done for right now. I believe so. I have another tomato plant right here. This thing's massive. But this one I trellised up recently, so it's not looking too crazy. I do still have to go in and prune, but it doesn't look too bad. I feel like it's got a lot more open space. So not too shabby. Not too shabby at all.